Hello and welcome to Buying into the Future, the public procurement podcast where we discuss all things public procurement. Today, we'll be looking at the issue of solar energy. Most of us are now familiar with solar panels as a source of clean energy. In fact, that's where my hot water at home comes from. But in this podcast, we'll be looking at solar power from a public procurement perspective. And I'm delighted to say that we have two guests with us today who can tell us all about this, what's happening in the field, etc. And I would like very much for them to introduce themselves to you now. Michiel, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Steve. This is Michiel Wensink. I'm the chair of the European Commission initiative that's called the Big Buyers Working Together. And then they call it a community of practice for sustainable solar. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And you are most welcome. Lucas, if you'd be so kind.
Yes, thank you, Steve. My name is Lucas Voet, and I'm a policy officer solar energy for the city of Amsterdam. And I focus on a lot of different projects, but one of them includes how to make solar more sustainable and also more circular and fair. And we are a member of the Big Buyers Working Together community of practice sustainable solar, of which Michiel is the chair. So we're really excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very, very much for your time today and for joining us. I would like at the beginning just to look at the current state of play with solar as regards public procurement. Where are we now? What's happening? What is possibly the future of the use of solar at that level? Who would like to start the ball rolling for us? Michiel, if you would.
Yeah, so I think what we see in the Netherlands, where we're both based, is that it's widely adopted both by public sector, such as hospitals and schools, government buildings. Yeah, it's generally used to generate their own electricity needs. We also see, of course, some private part of the market where it's used to feed electricity into the grid and basically to clean up the national power grid mix. So these are the key uses.
Thank you very much, Michiel. Lucas, would you like to add anything there?
So I agree with what Michiel says. And we as a local government, of course, have a real estate portfolio, our own offices, but also some public institutions, also schools. What we've been doing in the past is focusing on installing as much solar power as possible on all facilities, on all buildings, in order to use renewable energy within the buildings and within locations. And now that we've been learning a lot in the past years and we've been doing a lot of different projects, we want to focus on making solar procurement more sustainable. So we've learned that there's lots of different sustainability issues within the solar sector. I'm sure we're going to talk about it more later. But I guess that will be the focus for procurement, for solar procurement in the future.
Thank you very much indeed for that background. And you're quite right. Sustainability now is one of the bigger issues. I think that many people are very happy and content with the idea of solar power, but there are issues related to sustainability. So let's start with that. Michiel, if you would like to start this for us, what are the main sustainability concerns in photovoltaic supply at the moment?
Yeah, I think there's 4 concerns that we've been working on here in the past few years. And yeah, one of them is the high carbon footprint of many solar panels. And in fact, there are big differences. So some of the solar modules have a much lower carbon footprint, such as ones that are produced almost fully in Europe, but also some ones that are using thin films. And it's important because they have much bigger climate effects compared to the mainstream solar panels that are produced still large part by coal-based power. And because of the large carbon footprint and some other effects, it can take a very long time for them to earn back their carbon footprint. So the climate effect is smaller. So that's one important aspect. Then the second one is the forced labor. I think most of us are aware there's been reports about forced labor widely used in China, especially in the solar supply chain. And this is a very serious problem. And that's something that we are still not really dealing with. So we're actually mostly ignoring it, although we know better. We should do a little bit more about it. A third issue, I think, is the hazardous materials that are used in solar panels, such as PFAS, lead, and antimony. And the point is that there's actually very good alternatives for all these materials that are not hazardous or harmful, and they're actually also pretty low cost. Fortunately, still a couple of suppliers are already using these better alternatives, but that's something that we need to really promote. And then as a fourth issue with sustainability, that's really the durability, the longevity, so the technical lifespan of solar modules. So many of the solar modules, they're actually made with a little bit too low cost materials or too thin materials, and therefore they won't last for 20 or 25 years like people expect, but they last shorter. And with just a little bit better materials, and some producers do use these better materials or thicker materials, they can last a whole lot longer, and that's all much better from a sustainability perspective.
Thank you for outlining those for us, some very, very serious challenges. Lucas, on the subject of those challenges, then, obviously, as you mentioned in the beginning, this idea of trying to make photovoltaics more sustainable. What has that meant for you in public procurement, trying to make it more sustainable? What challenges have you faced? And what have you been doing to try and address those issues?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. I think, as a public government, as an institution, but I guess lots of organizations will have similar issues. We have different departments, right? So I'm a policy officer and we have our procurement department. So one of the things that we've done is start a conversation with our procurement colleagues and see how we can adapt our procurement documents and our tenders in such a way that we can procure more sustainable. And one of the obvious issues is the finances. Michiel rightfully just mentioned some of the main issues. And he also said that there's manufacturers that are already producing way more sustainable than others, which is absolutely true. But sometimes a bit of the downside is that those better manufacturers, to say it like that, are a bit more expensive. So there's always a budget discussion, right? So what we've tried to do also together with Michiel is to put together a list of basically all the manufacturers out there and compare them on all those criteria and see which one scores better. And what we discovered is that even if you have a low budget, you can already make some better options. So there's actually a better option for every budget. So if you are very ambitious and you really want the best of the best, you can go for it. But if you have a low budget and you only have budget for, let's say, normal panels, there's also better panels with the same price. So that's one of the things that really helped us to start making the right steps. And in Amsterdam, we are very ambitious. So we've said that now for the next and actually the last batch of real estate that we still need to provide with solar panels, we really want the best possible panel. So we freed up budget for that. So yeah, that's one of the things I'd say that is involved in such a process.
On that general point then, Michiel, how can public buyers use their purchasing power to influence better practices generally in the industry of solar?
Yeah, Steve, exactly adding to what Lucas was saying, it's really not too difficult. So it's just adding a couple of requirements on the sustainability aspects in your tenders, and you can quite easily ensure that you procure more sustainable PV modules. And this way, we also support these more sustainable producers. We enlarge the market for them. And the more people do this, the lower cost this becomes. So the smaller the cost difference between the mainstream panels. So that all helps in driving volume. So it's not too hard, just a few sustainability requirements, essentially.
If I could ask a follow-up to what you were just saying then, in terms of things like certifications, is there anything that you recommend that cities could use in this journey towards more sustainability?
Exactly. Yeah, actually there is. So we've developed this template for when you have a tender, and it contains these criteria and requirements on solar panels, but also for inverters, and some other topics are also covered in the template. The thing is that it contains many criteria and requirements that are related to safety and the quality of the panels. So that's the majority of what this template is about. but we've also added a couple of requirements and criteria on sustainability aspects. So I think that's a very easy way to use this, and it can also help as a sort of a checklist to ensure that you've covered all these aspects in your templates. So I think that would be a good start, even if you, as an organization, depending on your country, will adapt some of the requirements that are in the template. I think that could be a very good starting point.
Thank you very much. Let's just briefly move on to the idea that you introduced at the beginning. And Lucas, I'm going to start with you on this if I could. The idea of the community of practice that you have joined on solar PV. What motivated you to get involved in that? And what would you say are the benefits of joining a community of practice like this?
Well, I really believe in the power of working together and also in the power of public procurement, because just think about it. If all municipalities, all local governments, regions, national governments in Europe all work together and decide that they procure more sustainably, imagine the impact that has. And I think that's really the value of this community of practice, is that we're trying to get more members involved so that everybody can learn on how to procure more sustainable. And I think that's, to answer your question, what's so valuable about this community of practice, that we can share what we've learned, what challenges have we faced. And it's really interesting because maybe you think buying and installing solar panels, why is that an issue? That mustn't be difficult. But in fact, it's way more complicated than you might imagine. Therefore, I really see the value of this community because we share the practices of what we've learned. And yeah, that's also how we got involved, because we were already part of the Dutch WIRE group back in the beginning, where these issues were first signaled. And then we were really, alarmed by everything that we learned. And then we were really happy when the European WIRE group started. And we find this such an important issue that we find it important to take part in it.
Thank you very much. Michiel, if I could come back to you, we're going to a kind of more general point. We've been talking about public procurement as it pertains to solar specifically, but obviously solar is not the be-all and end-all of the green transition. How do you see the role of public procurement evolving as Europe moves further along in the green transition?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I think public buyers really are a crucial factor here. They really are in the lead, because mostly private buyers will focus on price or total cost of ownership. However, it's really important that these public buyers, that we take multiple interests along, and therefore that we show how you can buy more sustainable products, whatever it is, from solar to many other types of products, that we show with examples how to do this. We create the market, we create the demand for suppliers. We can help also the wholesalers and the distributors to understand which issues are important and how they can also ensure their offering to the market is also aligned more with the sustainability aspects and that they can be found. And if we do this, we can increase the scale, and that's really important for prices to decrease and therefore then attract more and more private buyers. But essentially, public buyers, I think, have to step forward and do this first.
Lucas, as someone, excuse the expression, someone who's been there and done this, that you have been very active in this field and the work that you've done, there may be cities, municipalities or whatever who are just starting out on this green transition journey, looking at things like solar, etc. What would you advise them to do?
Well, first of all, let's not all try to invent the wheel ourselves, right? So I'd say make use of everything that's been done and learned in the past. For example, the template that Michiel mentioned earlier, where it's made easier to procure sustainable solar, is available in all European languages. That's, for example, a really concrete tool that you can just use and apply in your own procurement. And also there's other research, other documents within the community of practice that is really helpful with procurement. So I'd definitely say start out there. And also don't hesitate to reach out for help, questions, lessons learned from others, from me, for example, but perhaps also other members of the community of practice. So I think that's really important when you're starting out.
Basically, ask those who've been through it, who know and have experience, share your experience. That this kind of thing is very, very important indeed in many aspects of life.
something that's also really important is to always include all your colleagues within your department, for example, within your organization that might have something to say in the process, and involve them early. Because what we've learned is that if you involve them later on, they might find reasons to not want to do it. So that's a lesson that we've also learned. Yeah, so I think that's also important.
Yes, Michiel, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So I'd like to add that it would be great if people can just visit our website, Public Buyers, to sign up to become a member of the community. It's all for free. And even if you don't, you can still download the template. It's indeed available in 25 languages and several other documents that can be very helpful for procuring any PV project. So please join the community and check out the website. Thanks.
Yes, Lucas, you'd like to come back in?
Yeah, I do. I do want to say one last thing, because we've discussed many sustainability issues, and Michiel mentioned a lot of them, and they're all included in the documents and guidelines available. But maybe there's people out there thinking about the circular economy or working on circular economy, and they might think, well, how are those issues addressed for solar panels? Because when you talk about the circular economy, you talk about a lot of different aspects, right? It's a really broad term. So you talk about reuse, repair, recycle. There's lots of different aspects to it. And yeah, in that area, in regards to solar panels, there is quite some development. We're definitely not there yet, but it's something that we want to include more and more in our projects and in our work. So we're really looking at reuse of solar as well. There's quite some challenges there still, but it's something that will probably become more and more available. And also the repairability and recyclability.
But no, it's a very important point. Thank you for bringing it up. Well, thank you, gentlemen, both very much indeed for your time today, for sharing your wisdom and experience with us. And for those of you listening in, please keep checking back. We will be uploading more content for the Public Buyers podcast, Buying into the Future. But thank you very much indeed for joining us today, and we look forward to you joining us again. Bye-bye for now.